Welcome to the Edge of Greatness podcast. The path to greatness is never linear and requires patience and consistency. Join us on our journey as we peel back the layers of success, searching for that elusive core. Each week we will explore a different component of greatness, utilizing experts who have traveled some part of the path that we are all on. We aim to uncover insights into the areas of leadership, coaching, performance, overcoming failure, the power of habits, and so much more. We are all on the edge of greatness. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Charles Schultz, and today I have with me entrepreneur and success coach, Jeff Heggie, founder of Jeff Heggie Coaching, as well as the host of two podcasts, the Jeff and Heidi Show, as well as Daily Success Strategies. Thank you, Jeff, for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for letting me be here. I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. So as I was digging into a little bit of what you got going on for our conversation today, I came across an interesting piece about you, and I want to start there. It's, as I was reading, it said you were a professional rodeo cowboy. Is that true?
That is true. That was a loaded question. I wasn't sure what was going to follow in that, but yes, I did. I used to rodeo professionally as a steer wrestler.
Awesome. Okay. So the steer wrestling is where you run out, you rope it, and then you have to tie it off. Is that right?
No, the steer wrestling is that's actually where I started. That's the tie down roping, and that's where I started out, but I couldn't make any money at it. So I switched events.
Okay.
What the steer wrestling is the steer's in the chute in the middle. You've got a guy on your right side that's called the hazer. He's just riding a horse to make the steer run straight. And you're on the left side. And when you go out in the arena, everyone's going full speed, horse chasing down a steer. You jump off onto the horns of the steer and wrestle them down.
Okay. Yeah. I know what you're talking about now. I've seen that before. That's awesome. That's a wild little like side piece about your life and growing up and stuff like that. That I was like, we didn't have that conversation when we met. And I was like, you know what, I got to start there because that's something that's really cool. How long did you do that for?
You know, I started that in high school, and I went a few years after high school as a professional. I won a couple Canadian intercollegiate championships at that point, and then I went professional, and I did that until the early 2000s.
That's awesome. Okay.
And now, funny story about it is, I actually was married on a Tuesday because we had rodeos on the weekend that I didn't want to miss.
That is definitely an interesting story right there. I don't know how you convinced your wife to go along with that one.
That's how I knew she was a keeper.
That's absolutely. So, now that the rodeo is done, you're now working as a coach for entrepreneurs and sports athletes and stuff like that, correct? So now that's kind of what you're digging into nowadays?
That's correct. So I actually, at the time, when I graduated from university, I graduated with a major in entrepreneurship and had a great opportunity to go work at a bank. And I turned it down because I wanted to rodeo. But eventually I did go back, and the bank still hired me, and I started in the banking industry. I did that for about 5 years, and then I started my own company. It was a manufacturing company. Started that in 2005. We manufactured artificial stone veneer, the stone that you see on the front of houses and that sort of thing. And, you know, from 2005 till today, with what the economy's done, we've pivoted a number of times, and we've had a lot of ups, a lot of downs. And unfortunately, right in the middle of COVID, we just wrapped it up. So we closed that company down this year. But it was a good 16-year run with that company. I've also been a basketball coach for the last 20 years. At various levels. And then I've been more focused on the coaching side for the last few years, with a lot of it focused on entrepreneurs. But the more I worked on it and the more people I met as I was doing it, I started realizing that the same thing I was working on with entrepreneurs in a lot of sense was the same thing I was working on with athletes as I was working with them in basketball and whatnot. And so as I started to focus more and more on coaching on mindset, I've started coaching more and more athletes. But my bigger focus still is the entrepreneur. but I'm working with a lot of teams, a lot of individual athletes as well.
That's awesome. So what I'm curious is obviously I believe mindset in athletics is a huge piece, but I've never really thought about mindset as it applies to an entrepreneur. Can you kind of talk me through how that carryover exists from a person maybe who played athletics and then now is going into business for themselves, how they can take that mental growth that they had through sport and apply it to being an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. To me, sports and everyday life, whether it's entrepreneurship or something else, is a direct reflection on one another. There's so much of a tie-in. And, you look at sports, the things you learn as being a leader, as being, aggressive, having setting goals and stuff like that. It's the same thing you're going to do in life. It's the same thing you're going to do in business. And when it comes to mindset, as an entrepreneur, there's the same sort of things that you need to do with, developing a growth mindset and believing on what your abilities are the same thing you need to do in entrepreneurship. Because just like in sport, when you can have negative self-talk and all those sort of things, the limiting beliefs, the same thing happens in entrepreneurship. And so it really is a real close direct reflection.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense for me, because when you're starting something, especially too, as an entrepreneur, you're starting things, you're going to have to deal with setbacks, and you have this plan in mind of how things are going to go, but rarely does it go as planned. And how do we bounce back between the ups and downs and stay focused on the progress? And I think that's kind of what we're getting at with using that mindset to handle the flow of a normal business, where you're going to have little peaks and valleys along the way. Does that sound?
Absolutely.
That okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So another thing that I want to dig into this. This is another fun one for me. I was looking at your website this morning, and there's a saying on your website. It says, "Ask better questions, receive better answers." So I need to ask you, what's the best question you've been asked recently?
Oh, okay. Well, let me just take a step back. I remember when probably the first personal development, I don't know if it was a tape or CD back then, but the first thing I listened to was Mark Victor Hansen, How to Think Big or something like that. And that was one of the things he repeated all over, was the size of your question determines the size of your answer. And so that's something I really put a lot of focus on, is what are the questions you're asking yourself? Because that's really what the conversations in our mind are a series of questions that we're just asking ourselves. I think probably the best question, and I have what I call my mindset questions, and I go through these every morning. And I would say the best question that I'm asked on a daily basis is, how are you going to step out of your comfort zone today? And the reason I say that is, think of anything when you started. Think of the first time you picked up a baseball bat. You were uncomfortable with it. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, until you're wherever you end up, whether it's college, pro, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're doing something every single day that's taking you outside of your comfort zone, it doesn't take long for your comfort zone to get really big. So if you can ask yourself, okay, what can I do today that's going to step me out of my comfort zone? You're really going to be able to gain a lot of confidence over the long run. It's just getting 1% bigger and better every day.
I like that. So you mentioned that you ask yourself questions every morning. So there's a series of questions that you go through. Can you share those?
There is, absolutely. And you can get them free on my website at jeffheggie.com/mindset. But there's 10 questions there, and I don't have them in front of me, but the first one is, what are you grateful for today? Because I think that's one of the things that really starts to prime your day. And it's other things that, do you mind if I take a step back and explain why I do it?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So the way I look at things is, really the outcomes that we receive and the things that we focus on are what create our life. The things we focus on create our lives. And so we need to take advantage of what's called our RAS, or our reticular activating system. And what that is, it's just now this is coming from a guy that's not a doctor. So it's just a small little bunch of nerves in the back of your brain, but it's basically a filter. And what it is, there's so many things going on around us all the time. Right now, whether it's birds chirping outside our window, it's someone in the next room, it's the air against our skin. We can't possibly pay attention to everything. But our RAS says what's important to us and what we should pay attention to. And so just to share a story on that, and I think this will help people relate to it. When I moved from Canada to Arizona, I bought my daughter a new car. It's a little Mitsubishi Spider convertible, cool little car, never seen one in my life, and bought this car. And in the next week I was like, did everyone in the neighborhood buy one, or what's going on? I'm seeing these cars everywhere. Well, they were always there, but all of a sudden it's something that was important to me. So my RAS was saying, hey, that's important, and I'm recognizing it. It's the same thing when you buy a new shirt or new something, and all of a sudden you see other people wearing the same thing. So what it does by going through these mindset questions every morning is, first of all, I write out my goals. And then I go through these mindset questions, because what that does is when something happens throughout the day that might be related to those, you've already identified these as things that are important to you. So rather than just not even noticing it, you're going to start picking up on those things. And so I think that's why it's important. And, like I said, I've got my mindset questions that you can get for free on my website, but it's okay to, make them specific to you. What is it that you want them to be? Because it's got to be things that are going to help you achieve your goals. So some of them are, like I said, what am I grateful for today? And I think just showing gratitude towards something every day helps you expand. How am I going to step out of my comfort zone today? What is my number one goal today? What's my number one priority? It's just all these things that are kind of just priming me for the day to recognize the things that are going to help me be successful.
Yeah, I like that. And I think it's funny that you mentioned like you bought the car and all of a sudden you saw it a bunch, because one of the guys I work with, he just got it was a 90 something Cadillac Escalade, the one that was like super famous in the late mid late 90s, the big boxy one. And I was like, man, I haven't seen one of these in years. And literally I left the gym that day and I'm like, 1, 2, 3. I was like, what is going on here? Why are they everywhere? And I thought that was exactly funny. Right. Yeah. But it was, again, they've always been out on the road. I lost track and I didn't pay attention to it because it wasn't the new shiny thing. And then all of a sudden he shows up with one. I was like, man, I like that car. I missed that. And then there they are all over the place.
Yeah, there you go.
I find that very interesting how that works and how the mind works in that aspect. So what I want to ask then is, do you coach when you work with entrepreneurs and players? Do you have them work with you on setting up their questions, or do you guide them in that process? Is that something you work with them on as well?
Yeah, I have them begin with my questions.
Okay.
And then as they continue on the process, if something really is important to them, I say, put that one in. If one of the questions that I've given them isn't a great fit, take it out, make it yours. And so, yeah, I do work with them on that. And I go through the process of getting them going on that. But oftentimes they will add questions or maybe adjust them or something to make them more personal.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you give them the foundation, and then as they get comfortable with it, they can branch out and create specifics within that same context of that question.
Exactly.
Okay. So I just happened to notice behind you have the Kobe Bryant book, The Mamba Mentality. What part of that, if any, have you taken and applied to your own life? Because I think that book's fascinating, and I think he was fascinating. And I'm curious if there's things that you took from that book that either stood out to you from that book standpoint, or that you've then gone, man, I'm going to try to apply that myself.
I think there's a lot of things I've learned from him that book is outstanding, but even his interviews that you can still access and stuff, like his interview with Lewis Howes was unbelievable. And, there's so many things that one of them that I think is really important is, people look at someone like him, look at Michael, whoever, and they're just such a natural gifted athlete and it all just came so easy. They worked their tails off. I mean, I think it's in that book where he talks about how he would always be there at the gym before a game at whatever time. And I can't remember who it was, but someone from the opposing team came in that day too. And they were saying, I got there, Kobe was already there. He was already in a sweat, and I was trying to outlast him. And Kobe just said, there's no way he was going to stay there longer than I was, because he was so mentally dominant.
Yeah.
And, whether you're looking at it from a business standpoint or an athletic standpoint, that is so powerful. I teach my basketball team. I make them do a lot of hard things, and it's for that purpose. And, I'm a coach that I love to fast break. I love to full court press, all those sort of things. So we do condition a lot. And an example, we had a practice one time, and, we get warmed up, and I'm like, okay, 5 up and backs. They do their 5 up and backs. So we get practicing. And just every so often, I'd say 5 up and backs, 3 up and backs, 7 up and backs, whatever it was. And at the end of practice, I said, okay, we got 5 up and backs. If you do it in this time, we're done. And after they did it, even our girls that were, it was a girls basketball team, even the girls that were typically slow, they made it within the time limit. And so when they finished, we gathered around. I said, okay, sit down around the circle. Everyone stretch out. I want to talk. And I said, I want someone to tell me how many up and backs we did today. They didn't know I was keeping track. And I don't know, we did a lot today. We ran hard. And I said, we did 101.
Oh, wow.
And they're like, wow, really? And I said, you know why we did it? I said, 1, we need to be in shape. But 2, you can do hard things now. And when you are in the 4th quarter and the game's close and everyone's tired and you're standing there and you look mentally strong and you can look your opponent in the eye and they don't think you're even tired yet, you won. And I don't know, I really like teaching that concept of I can do hard things, because we are so much more capable of things than we think we are. We can push so far beyond what we think we can do. And, in Tim Grover's book, Relentless, he talks about all those guys, it's the middle of the night. Kobe's in the gym getting a sweat on because he missed a shot last night, so
right.
It's really the dedication and hard work, I think.
Yeah, that's the main reason I wanted to ask that question, because in my opinion, he's a mental giant. He's one of the guys who figured it out, how to tap into the full ability of what he was given, and then to go a little bit further than everybody else and just be a winner in his mind before the game even played. He already knew he had beat you because he was going to be more mentally prepared to take you on, and it showed in everything he did. And the story that you were just talking about, where you had the girls running up and backs, have you ever seen the scene? You had to have seen this, Facing the Giants, where the coach is talking to the team and they're saying that they were playing an opponent this week, and they're like, they're good. And he's like, you don't think we can win? And he has him get his teammate on his shoulders, blindfolded him, and he ends up crawling 100 yards. And I'm like, he's like, when you don't think about how bad something is, and you're not focused on an end, like I only have to go 25 yards, or I only have to go X number of feet, or whatever it may be. If you're not focused on just getting to the end and you just go till you can't, you can survive and last so much more than you would otherwise, because your mind tells you to quit well before the body goes, yep, we're done. And I think that's one of the valuable lessons that we can learn about ourselves, is that if we keep looking for an end mark, that's where we'll stop. We won't surpass what we already think is our limit. But if we just shoot for something bigger and we just say, I'm just going to go, I'm just going to keep going. And then as I get closer, I'm going to raise the bar a little bit more. So I never actually catch the rabbit, or get the carrot or whatever it may be. I'm never going to get it. It's always just out of my reach. We can continue to grow and build upon it.
That just reminded me, I was running a half marathon up in Canada one time, and it was in the Rocky Mountains. And so it was in the trees and you really couldn't see where you're going. And I finished and I went back on the race just to see some people that were with me and see how far back they were. And as they got there, I was running with them to help them finish, and they were exhausted. And I just kept telling them, it's just around the corner. It's just around the corner. I was lying all the way. And I mean, after, they were like, come on, what's going on? You're lying. But they would have stopped. They would have walked that last mile or whatever it was. but they kept pushing themselves. If I would have said, you know what, you're going to push as hard as you can this next mile, they would have said, no, I'm done.
Yeah.
But because they thought it was just around the next tree, they kept
Right.
going, and
Yeah.
they did a lot more than they thought they could do.
Yeah. I think there's value in finding a short target and thinking, all right, get to this spot, get to this spot, get to that spot. And if you keep changing the spot once you get there, or once you get close, look to the next spot, you don't settle for that's where I'm going to stop. You don't think, okay, that's enough, but you have that thing that you're just constantly chasing and reaching for a little bit more. You find that you consistently make that progress, or you can keep going when you're tired or you don't want to. And I think that's the big piece of it.
You know, Jesse Itzler tells a cool story about when he wanted to run the 100-mile race. And when he was training for it, I think it was 33 miles. He could not get past that 33-mile mark. And so he hired a Navy SEAL to help him train. And this guy didn't do anything with the training. It was all mental.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I remember when we were actually in the race, there was one point he had an injury and thinking, I've got to quit or whatever. And this SEAL that's with him, he says, okay, let's run over there to the first aid station. You can get a drink or whatever. When you get there, make sure to tell them that we don't get tired. And he got there, and I think he said they're at mile 76. And he went and grabbed a drink and just said, hey, if you know what's cool, we don't get tired. And they took off and finished the 100-mile race. It's so much what you tell yourself. It's so much what you believe. And you're going to believe what you're continually telling yourself. So that's why it's important to take control of that conversation.
Yeah. So do you have any tricks or things that you use to help your athletes or your people that you're coaching overcome these mental hurdles? Because, you know, no matter who you are, no matter how high you get in life, what level you achieve, you're always going to have a mental hurdle. That's just the way the world works. And that's the way the human mind works. I think it is designed to start to question, am I supposed to be here? Can I go any further? What is there left for me to do? So how do we train ourselves to turn that part off, to like overcome the hurdles?
I think there's two things. One is recognizing it. And when you go through these practices, when you recognize it, you can change that conversation in your head. And because there are going to be times it's going to be like, yeah, I recognize I'm having this negative self-talk, but crap, it's still another 5 miles I got to run. But
Right.
You've got to be able to change that conversation. And, you know, one thing you and I both know, Tammy Matheny, one of the things I love about her is her win philosophy. What's important now? And I think that's, especially as a basketball coach, it was something I always deal with. You get your star athlete, they get in a slump or something. How do you change that? And like, for example, with my daughter, I wrote next on the toe of her shoe. So if she ever hung her head, it was like she saw that and it clued her in that lift your head, next, you're looking at the next shot. But with Tammy's philosophy, it's like, you can't change what's happened already. So look at what's ahead of you, what's important now, and there's where you need to focus. When it comes to confidence and all those things and the momentum, I think one of the things to do is it comes from the preparation you put in ahead of time. Because one of the things, I have an article on my website that I wrote about it once. It was, I think it was 2019 playoffs when Golden State was playing Houston. And it was Thompson was playing terrible. And I think he had, in the last 4 games, he had just been in a slump. But the thing was that I think it was the 4th game, he comes out and in the first couple minutes, he had more points than he had the whole game before. And the thing is that it's because he had already done everything previously. He had prepared himself. He knew he was a great shooter. So it didn't mean that, okay, I'm missing, so I'm going to quit shooting. You know, as an amateur athlete, you see that all the time. Oh, I'm not hitting well. I'm not doing well. So I'm just going to back off. No, he kept playing hard. He kept doing the same things because he had prepared himself before that. He had taken all those shots a million times in his life. He just needed to get his rhythm back. And that's what we need to do. It's preparing ahead of time. I remember having my kids at Michael Jordan basketball camp one year, and they're shooting foul shots. And someone asked him, okay, Michael, how many shots should we shoot a day? And he said, as many as it takes, that it doesn't matter whether it's a nothing game or a championship game, when you walk up to that foul line, it's just another shot that you shot a million times and you have no doubt it's going in. And so it's that preparation ahead of time that's going to really put you in the spot that you can have that confidence.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. And I like the next thing, because that kind of actually resonates with me, because when I was in college, I wrote next pitch on the inside of my hat. So whenever I took my hat off and pulled it down, I would see next pitch, and I was like, all right, well, back to work. Here we go. And it was my reminder that that plays over. I can't do anything about it. It's time to continue to move forward and not dwell on that. And another thing that I've had, so I was reading something, and I wish I could remember where I read it. I want to say it was A Mindful Journey by Vera Jo Bustos, but I for the life of me, I can't place it. So if I'm wrong, I apologize. But it was talking about doing a mental rep, doing a physical rep, and then whatever happens after, doing another positive mental rep. And it was a very interesting thought, because no matter what you're doing, you're going to have 2 out of 3 successful reps. So if you go, like as a golfer, for example, you do your mental rep. All right, crushed it right down in the fairway. Great. You do your shot. You're like, I'm in the rough. Before you go and put your club back, you go through a mental rep and you nail it in the fairway again. So all of a sudden your mind's getting used to positive mental reps. Do you use visualization at all with your athletes or yourself?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think one of the things that's important when you're looking at visualization too is not watching it like a movie. You've got to put yourself in that visualization. And I think that is, I mean, I'm sure you've heard the study, I think it was the University of Chicago did with the foul shots. And they took the 3 groups. One group did nothing. One group shot 100 a day or whatever. And the other group visualized 100 a day. The group that did nothing didn't improve. The other 2 groups almost improved the exact same. And so visualization is so powerful. And yeah, definitely it's something. And one of the things I encourage my clients to do is to do it from that moment your head hits the pillow, just before you're falling asleep.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a great time to start just having that visualization and really focusing on the success, but really doing it from being in it, being a part of that.
Yeah. And if you do it before bed, I mean, you might lead to some cool dreams as far as you being successful, and that creative mind kind of takes over and you start to have that success while you sleep too. So I could see that being beneficial as well. Yeah, no, I found it interesting though, because the mental side of it and the visual stuff, because I think there's also value in when you're doing the visuals and you're mentally preparing, you go through scenarios where you might fail and like experience that failure, but don't leave it at that. Have that experience, sit there for a second, think about why it went wrong, and then go back and correct the mistake within the visualization too. Has that something you've worked with as well?
Yeah, because that I've had clients that have done that. Is, you know, I'm working on this visualization, but I keep running into the same roadblocks. I'm not successful with it. And so, yeah, it's like, okay, what was it that caused that problem?
Yeah.
And how are you going to fix it? And visualize it, that you're going through that process. You know, just visualizing that you're, so I used to visualize all the time when I rodeoed. And so, you know, if I visualize that I go out there and I miss the steer and I land on my head, and then I back in the box and I'm ready. Well, what's in my mind? You know, it's
right.
I'm not in a good spot.
No.
So you've got to go through that process, because really when you can really have a vivid vision, your brain doesn't know the difference between a vision and reality. So you've got to put what you want to be reality in there. And, you know, a lot of times the vision, when it isn't working out how you want it to be, that's your opportunity to say, okay, why didn't it? Now visualize what I need to change. So,
yeah. I'm trying to think where it was. I was reading, this was another book I read, but they were talking about the power of turning on our creativity through the thought process of visualizing failure. I want to say it was The Science of Winning and Losing. I think it's called Top Dog. And they were talking about why some people are successful where other people aren't, and where we allow pressure to overcome success. And they were talking about in that moment when failure happens, if you just leave it at a failure and you don't visualize a positive after, or you don't visualize what solutions could possibly happen, you don't activate the creative thinking part of our brain, and we don't create new solutions. And I think that's one of the values of using visualization all the time, not just once, not just pregame, not just postgame, but like throughout all the things that we're doing. If you're in basketball, for example, this is a great example actually, because let's say you're in the game and you go out and you miss 2 shots. Well, when you come out of the game, instead of thinking about the 2 missed shots, why not visualize them going in and doing it well? Like use that time while you're on the bench to get yourself, you're in your mind back on track. And I don't know how many people actually utilize that. Cause I know when I was younger, I wouldn't have done that. If I would have struck out in a game, I wasn't going to go back and sit on the bench and visualize me getting a hit. I'd be like, God, I struck out. This sucks, man. What in the world? You know, my mind wouldn't allow me to do that. But I also didn't have people like me and you talking about it either. That wasn't the big thing. So do you think there's value in teaching our young athletes that instead of thinking about the failure, when you have a downtime in a game, use it as a reset moment to think about a positive outcome and see if you can get yourself back on track?
Absolutely. And not only that, it's okay, if I have that failure, how do I respond? You know, because, you know, there's the, are you going to react or are you going to respond type thing, you know, and that's when the next comes in handy and stuff. But if you've already visualized that, if you visualized that, you know what, there's 2 seconds on the clock, I've got 1 shot to make it and I miss, do I just hang my head or what do I do? Right. And so not only do you need to kind of recalibrate that and look at it from the positive, but you've also got to recognize that, okay, if that happened, what am I going to do? And how do I turn that into a positive? So,
okay, that makes sense. And I think that's the thing about all of this is that how do we maximize creating consistent positive outcomes through our mental preparation? And I think that's the key to the visualization piece is, can we continue to practice it just like we do our game, to where when a bad thing happens, we then naturally just start to create a positive outlook for what's next. So, one of the things I want to know now is when you're coaching and when you're working with your clients and people like that, what is their biggest mental hurdle that you've come across? Because I've talked to a few different mental performance coaches. I've talked to some people who work with strictly athletes and strictly entrepreneurs. You have a cross between a lot of things. Do you find that entrepreneurs and athletes have similar mental blocks or mental hurdles to overcome, or are they a little different? Do they not really coincide the same way at each level?
You know what, I mean, everyone's different. Even, you know, I've worked everything from professional athletes to I'm coaching a 10-year-old basketball team right now. That's my mental hurdle.
There you go.
And everyone does have their differences, but you know, if I were to say what's one common thing I find, it's the limiting beliefs that, you know, I have a process we go through to set goals and really get clarity on your goals and understand your why behind your goals and stuff. But it's the limiting beliefs of why they don't deserve those goals. And the funny thing is, it almost always comes down to something a family member said years and years ago.
Interesting.
And you know, whether it's I'm going to go play Division I baseball, or I'm going to build this company from scratch, there's always some limiting beliefs there that are just holding them back from really taking off. And once they can get control over that, and once they can overcome those limiting beliefs, it's amazing what you see people do.
Yeah. Now, do you think that part of that is because it's a family member, or is it just like somebody told them they weren't capable? Because when I was younger and I was playing baseball, I went to a fall like training camp is what I guess it would be like. And while I was there, they gave you a performance evaluation and they said, you know, you're probably a D3 player at best. And I took that and I said, okay, I'll show you. Right. Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to say there's anything against D3 because I think there's some fantastic Division III programs out there. But for me, I wanted to do more. I wanted to prove that I belonged. So I used that as fuel. But you're saying like these negative thoughts are kind of stemming from somebody telling them that, you know, this is where you belong. Do you think that's a product of our time? And maybe like the where we've gotten to as a society because we're not as maybe not as mentally tough to start? We're a little softer, or is there because it came from a loved one maybe?
Well, I don't even think it's necessarily that it comes from a loved one. I'm just thinking of some of the recent ones I've dealt with. But even that, I mean, I think that when you can use that as fuel, like you did, or, you know, if you look at the scouting report for Steph Curry, you know, his was trash.
Right.
And you can use that for fuel. But at the same time, what happens if you go out there and you go and you've got a D1 scout looking at you, and then they do up a scouting report that gives you something similar? Then you're thinking, oh, maybe that guy was right. And that's what you've got to overcome. Gotcha. You know what? It doesn't matter how many scouts or coaches give that same report. You only need one.
That's true.
You only need one to say, this is a D1 player on my team.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and when it came down to it, I only had one D1 offer. That's where it ended up going. And that's, you know, it ended up working out well for me. And I found the right fit. And thankfully it was the right fit, because had I just been holding out for a D1 offer and it wasn't the right fit, it would have been a terrible thing. And all of that work and that effort would have been like, well, great. Now I'm here. I got my D1. Great. But I'm completely unhappy. I'm never going to see the field. This place is just not for me. It didn't work out that way. I was lucky, but it's interesting that we get kind of, you know, sucked into these beliefs about ourselves that isn't based on our performance, but by the outside world. I feel like we have, in today's day and age, bigger rabbit ears than we've ever had. And we listen to all these things on the outside, all these critics, all these people who are talking, and we don't have that internal belief. So I guess my question is there a way for us to start to build that internal belief that makes us a little more bulletproof to the outside criticism?
You know, I don't know who to give it credit to, but it's an awesome quote. It's, your opinion of me is none of my business.
I love that.
And I love that quote.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, I mean, again, it goes back to putting in the reps. And I mean that both on a physical and a mental basis. You know, if you're doing the things, if you're doing all the mental work that is going to give you a powerful mindset, and you're not doing any of the physical stuff, you're not getting out there and swinging the bat, you're not doing any reps, well, then, yeah, it's not going to work out so well. But when you are doing what's necessary on both sides of it, that's when you can really build the momentum and the confidence. You know, you look at Tony Robbins talks about, I talk about it in my momentum series, but you look at human potential, action. You know, when you take your potential and you really put massive action into it, you get the results, which develops the confidence. He says belief and certainty. And then it's just a cycle. When you get that confidence, you're going to have more potential. More potential is more action. And what happens when there's a break in there, when something happens, someone says something, you have a bad game, whatever it is, you've got to look back and say, okay, where's that break? And where do I need to take a step back and readdress that? Okay, I need to take more action. I need to put in more reps in the practice. I need to do more of my mental training, those sort of things. Because it's not just saying, okay, I've got to take massive action and that's going to get me to the league. You know, you've got to do all the right things, but it's everything you can do before will prepare you for the time when you're ready to perform. You know,
that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, because like you said, there's a lot of pieces that go into being successful, whether it's in sports or in business. And if you only do one part of it, you're leaving a door wide open that's going to be leaking a lot of stuff that you could be getting positively into your business, your game, your coaching abilities, whatever it may be. And we have to incorporate everything to make the full version of what we're capable of, not just a partial version. Yeah. So, what I want to know is, tell me a little bit about the daily success strategies, because I think that's kind of interesting. I think that's something that a lot of my listeners can listen to and gain value from, because from what I've listened to and heard, they're short little snippets and they're designed around giving you something positive and something to think about on a daily basis. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that actually has probably been as valuable to me as anybody. But what that started out as is one of my clients just saying, is there some way, just give me a daily shot of motivation type thing. And so it started out just a little voice memo I'd send them every day. And then I got doing it, and I'm like, if I'm doing this every day, I might as well put it on YouTube. If I'm going to do this on YouTube every day, I might as well make it into a podcast. So that's how it started. And I do it 5 days a week. And I think today was somewhere around 279, something like that. And yeah, they're 5 to 15 minutes long, and they're just, focused on success strategies. Whether it's, some days it's going to be more focused on entrepreneurial, some days it's going to be productivity, some days it's going to be mindset, whatever it might be. But it's just really focused on what you need to do on a consistent basis to be successful, putting success habits in place. And I guess one of the reasons I say it's probably been more beneficial for me than anybody. It's not easy coming up with a topic 5 days a week. So it keeps me on my toes to be like, okay, hey, what am I going to talk about this week? And so, yeah, it's been cool.
Yeah, no, I have enough trouble just thinking of one to talk about, on my Thursday chalk talks. I'm like, man, what do I want to tell everyone today? Because, over time you feel like you're starting to repeat yourself, but there are some things that are worth repeating, which is great. But I think the other thing that's valuable for, obviously, probably from your end, as well as from the listeners, is that when you're consistently hearing those messages and you're consistently saying those messages, you're hammering home the ideals and the things that you want to live your life like. Those are the things, the principles. And when you're speaking them every day, you can't help but then go, well, I said it, now I gotta go live it. So let's do it. And same as if you're listening to it, that positivity, that success in your mind, and you start your day off with that, and you're like, all right, let's go hammer this home today. And I think that's something that can be valuable, because to be good or great at anything, you have to consistently perform. You have to consistently do things. It can't be well, today's my day, I'm gonna do a lot, and then the rest of the week I can coast. That's just not how it works. So I think there's a lot of value in building something like that and doing something like that regularly. And so I encourage my listeners, go check it out. I think it's something that you can implement into your daily routines and habits. I think it's something that would build consistency in your thought process to start your day. And I think that's the key for anybody who was trying to be successful. I think that's what we're all talking about this whole episode, is that consistency.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I talk about a lot. It's just putting the success habits in place. Jeff Olson, the author, he says, when you talk about success habits, they're the things that are easy to do, but they're easy not to do. And when you can just do the little things right, and you do it on a consistent basis and then let it compound, it goes a long ways.
Yeah. I like there's a saying, and again, I don't know who said it, but there's a difference between simple and easy. Like, there's a lot of things that are simple to do that if you did them well, it would make a big difference, but that doesn't make them easy, because you have to make a choice to actually implement them, to actually do them. And I think that's a key component of that growth as a person, to do the simple things consistently well. Yeah. So, Jeff, what I want to do now is I want to give you an opportunity to connect to my audience and share some of the things and ways that they can connect with you. And I'll make sure I put them in the show notes, but where can they see what you're doing? Where can they follow your journey and what's happening next? Or if they want to connect with you personally, are there some things you'd like to share?
Absolutely. Thank you. My main website is jeffheggie.com, jeffheggie.com. And you can find everything there. I've got my Momentum series. It's a free series to help you set goals, get clarity, and really understand your why. And that's jeffheggie.com/momentum. We talked about the mindset questions. That's jeffheggie.com/mindset. I've got my High Achievers Mindset Secrets course on there. I've got different courses that you can check out on Instagram. It's Jeff Heggie Coaching, and I'm on all the social networks. And so Instagram is probably where I'm most active, but I'd love to have you connect everywhere.
Yeah, no, awesome. And I'll put that in the show notes for everyone. Hopefully they can reach out and connect and see what you're doing. I think you're doing some awesome stuff. I really do appreciate you taking time to join me today. It's been a pleasure. So as always, guys, keep reaching for the stars, fall flat on your face. But remember, whenever we fall, always get up.
Thank you for joining us today on the Edge of Greatness podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and join us again next time as we continue to dig deeper into the key components of greatness. The path to greatness is never linear, so remember to keep pursuing greatness no matter what. Keep stretching your abilities, reach for the stars, and fall flat on your face. But no matter what happens, remember, whenever we fall, always get up. Until next time, I'm Charles Schultz, and this was the Edge of Greatness podcast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please take a moment now to subscribe, rate, and review our show. We are all on the edge of greatness.